Okay, welcome back to Bolagsdagen here at Erik Bank. And the next company up to present is Swedish biotech company Immunicum. And that's a very interesting company that recently announced a major acquisition of a Dutch biotech company called DC Prime. And here to tell us more about that is Sijme Zeilemaker, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Immunicum. Sijme, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, I'm here to tell you a bit about Immunicum, but definitely also about recent events that we have communicated. So first about just Immunicum. Immunicum is focusing on cell-based therapies against cancer. Specifically in our case, we focus on allogeneic therapies, which are off-the-shelf therapies that are not from the patient itself, but for example from donors, and therefore can be given to more than just one patient. The lead product based on this technology has already completed a phase 2 controlled study in which we showed the typical signs of an immunotherapy being the deeper responses of a tumor, more durable responses, and also the benefit in survival in this controlled setting versus the standard of care. Apart from this phase 2 study, we've also completed 3 other phase 1 studies, treated over 100 patients now, and also showed a good safety profile, which is also quite crucial, especially in these advanced therapies for cancer. Now, with these recent results, we received the FDA RMAT designation, and this is a designation similar to the breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA. They grant that to therapies that they believe have a breakthrough potential and they want to support to get to the market as quick as possible. So that was a very positive event for us just before the summer. We also had a while back announced a collaboration with Pfizer and Merck Serono, or the German Merck, to supply their checkpoint inhibitor for our checkpoint inhibitor combination study, being the Iliad study, which was a positive collaboration for us to be involved in. And with that, I think we're really in a growth opportunity now in terms of the phase of the company. We're in an exciting space of cell therapy. We're in the next generation area in terms of allogeneic off-the-shelf therapies. And with the FDA validation and with the data we have in hand, we are now looking towards bringing that to the next phase of development. We recently completed our management team with the addition of a new CEO. So this was Sven Roman being appointed with his experience in pharma and biotech to really build this company for the long term. Now, a bit more in detail about what our cell therapy is doing. It's an allogeneic cell therapy, which means that in our case we start from a healthy donor. And from a healthy donor, similar to a blood donor, we take out immune cells, we activate them in a specific way, and then we inject these cells into the tumor tissue of a patient. That can be any tumor tissue, for example the primary tumor, but also a metastatic lesion. Just one lesion to kickstart this process. The difficulty with cancer is that the immune system has difficulties recognizing that this is something that has to be cleared, that has to be resolved. What we do is inject inflammatory, so activated immune cells into that tumor tissue of a patient, and that creates a whole cascade of the patient's own immune cells becoming activated and starting to recognize and attack the cancer. The end product of this mechanism is actually that you get the patient's own activated T cells, which are crucial to immunity, even in the case of COVID-19. These T cells going into the blood circulation and seeking out any tumor tissue that it resembles. And that's why it really kickstarts by a local inflammatory reaction. You get a systemic response against the cancer, and then you can really show the power of the immune system against cancer. Now we call this the immune priming of the immune system. So we kickstart the system, and we are very comparable to the space of vaccines and primers in this setting. Now vaccines have been something that have been tried for cancer for a long time, especially the use of tumor-associated antigens, which are similar to the tumor tissue, being combined, for example, with autologous cells, so the patient's own dendritic cells in the case of dendrion. That is a name that has been very visible in the dendritic cell space because it was the first generation to try this approach with the patient's own cells, but in a way with the wrong type of antigen material. It was not tumor specific enough. Now a step in the right direction is the use of neoantigens, so the patient's tumor specific antigen material. And for example, there we see BioNTech, known of course for the COVID vaccine now, but also Gritstone in the US, companies that take the tissue of a patient, analyze that and make a specific tumor vaccine for that patient. Now that makes it more tumor specific, but it also needs a vaccine candidate per patient. So obviously when you want to treat as many cancer patients as possible, you will have an issue on getting that to each patient. Now what we are doing is using the tumor within the patient as the source of the response. And because of that, it becomes a tumor-specific immune response against that tumor. And we are doing so by injecting inflammatory cells in that tissue. Our comparators are more, I would say, limited molecules that either activate only one pathway or only one molecule. And unfortunately for such a developed system as the tumor microenvironment, that is not enough to overcome the high hurdle of this immunosuppression. So we truly believe that we have, with our cell therapy, the mechanism in place to overcome the strong defense of the tumor. Now, when you have an activated immune system, it will still be difficult for the immune system to really attack the cancer cells because they still have a lot of defenses in play. And there is where a lot of the first successful immunotherapies like checkpoint inhibitors come in. PD-1, which is I think the first checkpoint inhibitor that really showed a difference in this space, can attack the cancer cells as long as there is an already activated immune response ongoing. So we have done some preclinical work here to test if we can add efficacy on top of a PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor. And in this model where PD-1 alone didn't have any effect, we could show that the addition of Elixir and Cell, only 2 injections, created an inhibition of this tumor growth. Now CTLA-4 in this model is much more effective on its own already, but it doesn't eradicate the tumor. It can only further delay the tumor in its growth. But again, if we added 2 shots of Elixir and Cell, we started seeing 7 out of 10 mice in this case having a complete response. So all tumors being eradicated. And even if you give another challenge of this tumor tissue, there was no further growth, which really shows that the immune system is in place and can control the tumor tissue. Now this is very exciting to show that indeed our Kickstarter approach can work in combination with these types of checkpoint inhibitors very well in synergy. And that I think is reflected when you look at our pipeline. We started in a few indications where we combined with the standard of care, and we learned that, for example, specific kinase inhibitors like sunitinib in our phase 2 study have a very good synergy. Then we started the combination with checkpoint inhibitors, the Iliad study that is ongoing, and of course we hope to show you results next year on that. And with that, we're really starting to implement Elixir and Cell in different areas and different indications in cancer therapy. To show you the highlights of that phase 2 study that we have performed, this has been a study that started back in 2015, so quite some time ago, where we added Elixir and Cell on top of sunitinib, the standard of care, in kidney cancer versus sunitinib alone. So we had a control group of the standard of care. Now sunitinib on its own can delay the growth of a tumor, but it rarely leads to eradication of the tumor because it can simply only reduce the growth of a tumor, more comparable to chemotherapy, for example. Now, if we added only 2 injections of Elixir and Cell on top of this standard of care, we had more complete responses, so patients having a complete eradication of their tumor. We also saw more durable responses, so the tumor was delayed or under control for a much longer period. And of course, now we start following patients for a longer period to see how much that affects the survival. We still have, unfortunately, a number of patients that are not responding where you don't expect to see an effect on survival, but we do see that the patients that are responding, and you can see here that that's at a higher rate, also have a better survival. For example, we had 5 complete responders in this study that are still alive, and some of them are going 4 or 5 years in follow-up now, while the control group had only 1 complete responder, which was not confirmed in the end and also died shortly after 3 years. So this is for us exciting data to work on, and we're still following these patients to reach the survival in the active, so the combination group as well. So we're still following this study. Now the ongoing study in terms of active treatment is the Iliad study with checkpoint inhibitors. We're now at the stage where we are nearing the complete enrollment of the study, which is of course an important milestone, but then we can also follow these patients for a number of imaging cycles to see if we can see something for example, on efficacy. Efficacy is important, but of course safety is maybe even more so in this setting, where we treat a number of different indications in one study. We're treating 3 different dosing regimens to these patients, so we're going to collect a lot of data from this study, and we'll have that full overview towards the second half of 2021. Now, based on the phase 2 proof of concept we have in kidney cancer, together with the standard of care, we have also outlined how we can further build that towards the market and really expand the potential of our program. And we've developed these strategic pillars to help us do that. Now, the standard of care is changing rapidly in a number of these larger indications. That's why we have now highlighted actually an independent route to the market in a smaller indication like sarcoma or GIST that we also did a phase 1 in, where we can continue working with the standard of care, a kinase inhibitor, but then in a smaller setting so we can more quickly get that to the market without requiring a partner to supply their material to us. So that's an exciting space where we can move quickly and secure that this cell therapy can get to the market and start treating patients at the right type of reimbursement. We will continue our work with the market leader, the checkpoint inhibitor, because that's of course where a lot of pharma are active and a lot of the larger indications are being treated. And based on the data from Iliad, we can really make that work with different partners. And of course, we already have there the collaboration with Pfizer and Merck Serono. We've established more the breakthrough potential, where we feel that if we continue in kidney cancer, it will definitely be this exciting combination with CTLA-4 that's already being given to patients as a combination to checkpoint inhibitors. But if we add Elixir and Cell on top of that, we truly hope that we can translate this preclinical efficacy into an aspiring breakthrough for these patients with kidney cancer. And then last but definitely not least, based on the exciting biology that is now proven with dendritic cells, we feel it's the right time to start expanding into other DC approaches that we feel have potential, but also similar mechanisms with NK cells and T cells. Now, on that last note, we obviously had an important announcement, I think it was 2 weeks ago, time is moving fast, and this was the proposed transaction with DC Prime. Now, this is a company that we've known for a long time, because apart from the first generation autologous dendritic cell approaches, this is a company that also has an allogeneic, so an off-the-shelf dendritic cell approach, where we have a lot of overlap when it comes to the underlying mechanisms and a lot of shared belief in the data. However, they are approaching it in a different way, and especially in their clinical programs, they're treating blood-borne tumors there. So for example, they have a phase 2 ongoing in AML, which is a type of leukemia, where they treat with their cancer vaccine to try to reduce patients from having a tumor recurrence. They are positioning this as a relapse vaccine to make sure that once you have a reduced tumor, you can help the immune system get control over the tumor and not let it come back or further grow again, which can really make a big impact to the patient's care. Because they have a cancer vaccine and actually a cell line of this cell therapy, they also have a lot of manufacturing benefits when it comes to the scalability and cost of goods of this approach. And they're also now looking into expanding into solid tumors with the same type of relapse vaccine approach, but then for cancer types like ovarian cancer. So there's a lot of shared knowledge and belief in the dendritic cell biology, but very different applications, and therefore we really feel that it can expand our market potential with the same proof of concept that we have seen in Mereka. Now, the other reason and key reason for doing this is also to really expand our organization with the right type of additions. Both companies are quite lean organizations, but the benefit to us is really that DC Prime has in-house facilities, research facilities, where they do research but also work on the manufacturing process. And we believe that if the companies would come together, you would get the benefit of doing a lot more work in-house, while now, for example, we are doing a lot of outsourcing. So contracting that work to, for example, the US, but also our current manufacturing in Germany. So that brings a much more stronger in-house system where you have full control over your destiny. And we also believe that in the end, pharma will appreciate that type of control over your destiny when you get closer to the market. They're based in Leiden in the Netherlands, which is a leading biotech hub there, which of course helps us further attract talent to the companies, but also a broader pool of investors. We are very appreciative of what we have here at the Nasdaq Stockholm, but now we can start expanding that into Europe and perhaps even into the US with positioning a more global company. The first step there is, of course, that with this acquisition, we get their anchor investor, Van Herk, into the company as a large shareholder. Now, the benefit is that this is really a recognized name that has been part of, for example, Galapagos, Ablings before it was acquired, but also here in Scandinavia, Zealand Pharma and BioInvent. It's a very successful name that we hope that a lot of investors will also follow in their portfolio. And with that, we want to really aim for becoming a leading global pharmaceutical company with this cell therapy space around dendritic cells. Now, some key highlights of the transaction. The technical definition is that we acquire the shares of DC Prime by providing shares to the current owners, and with that, Van Herk becomes a large shareholder of the company, together with AP4, who is very supportive of this transaction. We will further expand our management team, and importantly, also the board gets an addition of the representative of Van Herk, but importantly also a leading scientist who has been involved, for example, in the checkpoint inhibitor space. Now, a key date to keep in mind here is the December 18th date, where of course we have the official vote, and after that we can really start integrating this company and building the joint plans together. Now, about those joint plans, what we can already tell to you is that, of course, because we have clinical studies ongoing on both sides, we directly expand the number of value inflection points already for the near term in 2021. So we have Iliad ongoing, which will read out during 21. They have a phase 2 ongoing in AML, which is going to give the top line efficacy results also towards the end of 21. But I think what's very interesting already is that in December, they have been selected for an oral presentation at ASH, which is a major oncology conference, to present some interim results from their study. So that is already giving a readout to us that's of interest. And of course, then we start working towards the end of that study and building plans how to move forward based on that. So I think we'll leave it at those near-term inflection points, but of course the first date to keep in mind is the December 18th EGM date. So I'll take any questions you might have for the public.
All right. Thank you very much for a good presentation. I think we can leave this slide on. From your description, it's obvious that you and Immunicum and DC Prime are a lot of similarities, and you seem to be, known of each other for a long time. And what is the key reason that this merger happens at this point in time? And if you can elaborate a bit about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have been in discussions actually for a few years, and it has always been more scientific collaborations, potential projects that we can do together on this shared knowledge. But of course, they were also doing a lot of building of their company and getting the right structure in place. Earlier this year, we felt that it was the right time to start discussing more a potential merger, because we felt that with their facilities, it was the right time for us to move that more in-house and have more control over our destiny. And of course, one of the objectives that we also raised earlier this year was to see if we can expand our investor base. And having Van Herk as an institutional investor can really help support our investor base. We have, of course, AP4 as a large shareholder, but beyond that, we want to further diversify and see if we can get more stability and long-term gain from those investors. So that's mainly the reason why we want to do it now. Obviously, they have a phase 2 ongoing, and in terms of value inflection points in the near future, that was also helpful that we could plan for these value inflection points in parallel to what we have ongoing with the Iliad study.
So it seems like the two companies are sort of aligned when it comes to the clinical project here. Your value inflection points approaching at the same time in both companies. So it seems to be a good match from that point of view. And what you're acquiring here is obviously there's a project, there's a technology platform, and there are research facilities. And I mean, of course, it's important that you go from one project to two projects in phase 2. But I mean, what's the value of these other assets that you get into Immunicum from the acquisition?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always said we had some interesting project in our pipeline, and we've always focused a lot of our efforts on Elixir and Cell, right? We have a product that can do multiple indications, already has a lot of demands when it comes to the investments into research and development. However, you don't want to be, as a company, a one-trick pony. And because Elixir and Cell is now in a space where we can start moving that into the next phase, it's the right time to start expanding the pipeline. Here we have the benefit that the phase 2 is ongoing, but we definitely look beyond that. And of course, they start expanding into other types of solid tumors, but we also have a lot of preclinical projects where we can really further show what dendritic cells can really do in the cancer space. And it's going to take us some months to really come with a joint plan. And we hope people will be a bit patient on us providing such a plan to the public. But there's definitely more to it than the 2 clinical programs. We're going to build a powerhouse around quite a strong pipeline in different indications.
Right, it seemed to be a very good match, the combination of these 2 companies. I have one question relating to what we can see here in the pipeline, is that you talked about the Iliad trial ongoing and AML trial ongoing from the DC Prime project. What about the America trial? It's completed, and it took some time before the data matured, and you could present overall survival and so on. But what's the next step there? Is that trial sort of completed and fully reported, or what's the next step?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we say it's completed, but obviously this is a study that can continue for quite a while. And the more we follow up patients, the stronger we gain insight into the survival benefit, right? We've now followed patients on average 2.5 years, which is already showing now a difference in the median survival. The longer we follow, we will have a stronger sense of, okay, are these complete responders indeed cured for over 5 years? Are responders doing well? And for example, what is the exact difference in the average survival? So we can use that for our next studies in planning also the size of those studies. So what we will continue to do is every 6 months there's going to be a readout in terms of the survival. We will follow up with patients if they're still alive. We of course still are awaiting the final number for the median survival in the Elixir and Cell arm. So that will be reported at the next 6 months or the 6 months after. We are also working on a publication, of course, on the results we have already achieved to date, and we can continue that for a while because, of course, the survival is still maturing. So you can expect some news flow coming out of that, but we want to make sure that people understand we have the data in hand. There is a difference in survival, and we will report at the next follow-up what the update is going to be. But this is more in an update phase now. With Iliad, we are really at the active phase of the study, and we therefore want to make sure that the focus is on Iliad in terms of output.
Right. So yeah, I understand that, but there's still important data to be sort of collected from that study as
absolutely.
well. I have a final question. It's you touch upon that when you described the merger with DC Prime and their current major shareholder Vänligen. They're in Sweden. They're mostly known for their involvement in BioInvent. And you've also stated that you have sufficient funding to fund the company until the beginning of 2022. And you also asked for a mandate to issue shares of up to 20% of the share capital. So that sort of indicates that you will do some sort of fundraising next year. Can you elaborate a bit about that and what sort of the plans are, if there are any?
Yeah, I think, look, we've sat down with, of course, their management team and looked at the expenses that are now committed. These are the studies that are now committed, and based on this, and bringing the teams together, and actually a lot of synergy when it comes to the cost that we put into CMC or the manufacturing process, we have the joint plan with a runway until early 22. So we can cross some of these value inflection points purely based on the current runway. However, we're going to use the coming months to really build a plan together, and that's what I say about it's not just the ongoing phase 2 studies. It's the whole pipeline that we want to develop and build a leading position on. So this will take some months to form a joint development and business plan, and financing is going to be part of that. I think what is important here to say is that we are indeed asking for this mandate to have the ability to add, for example, an institutional investor through a directed issue, so that at least we can move full steam ahead when that's the right opportunity or timing. And we already have the commitment of Van Herk for a next financing, that they already commit to a certain number that's representative of their stake. So they're committed to the future of this company. We know AP4 is also committed to this joint exercise, and of course now with the EGM we're asking for all shareholders to give their approval to us.
All right, there seems to be exciting times in Immunicum, and you have to wait an update on how to bring the company forward.
Yeah.
And I think with that we conclude this presentation with Immunicum. Thank you, Sijme, very much for a good presentation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.